The one thing that sports has taught me is that you have to accept and appreciate the stars who are shining at the moment. Because in sports, there's a new star born every day. You might have been the leading scorer one game, but then the next game, somebody comes along and does something well, and you want to continue to go with the hot hand, right?
Good morning, HR. I'm Mike Coffey, president of Imperative, bulletproof background checks with fast and friendly service. And this is the podcast where I talk to business leaders about bringing people together to create value for shareholders, customers, and the community. Please follow, rate, and review Good Morning HR wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or at goodmorninghr.com. In the United States, professional sports leagues generate over $100 billion in annual revenue, and college sports generate around $20 billion in annual revenue. And like any other business, all of that revenue is connected directly back to the individuals who bring their talent to the front office, the locker room, the court, or the field every single day. Sports is a people business. Joining me today to discuss what people leaders in other businesses can learn from professional and college sports is Dr. Jamil Northcutt. Jamil is the founder of Strategic Transitions Advisors, STA, which helps people and organizations navigate change strategically. Prior to founding STA, Jamil served as Major League Soccer's Senior Vice President of Player and League Advancement. And before joining MLS, Jamil held roles at the NCAA, the National Football League, the Cleveland Browns, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Southeastern Conference, and the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, where he also played football and received his PhD. Jamil also serves on the advisory boards of a number of sports-related and private equity groups. Welcome to Good Morning HR, Jamil.
Hey, Mike, thank you for having me. Good to be here today.
So you played college sports and you've worked in the NCAA, the NFL, Major League Soccer. Two-part question. What's the differences between sports as a business and other areas of business? And then maybe what similarities might surprise leaders in other businesses between sports and other areas?
Yeah, so to answer that question in two parts, I think how I categorize it is that they're distinctively similar. The distinction in both of the sports and kind of the business piece is you have somebody that's there, meaning the athlete, that's representative of something that you truly care about. That's where the whole term fanatics and fanatical and fandom and those things come in. And so people are heavily engaged in their emotions about these teams and things that they like. In the collegiate space, people have attended these institutions. It's been a part of their memories and their walk of life and their journey where they've met their wives and spouses, or they pledged fraternities. They went to these games. They created these incredible memories of being a part of these sports franchises. So I think that's something that people lean into and they care about. When it comes to the professional side of the house, these teams have been cemented in these cities for a number of years. Not only have they been submitted in these cities for a number of years, there's also investment that has gone into it, whether it be state taxes, other federal taxes that people are paying to have these franchises come that create some of these environments for them to kind of go and enjoy their weekend, to unplug from work and some of these other things that they have, and they get a chance to engage. And plus sports entities too, particularly on the professional sports side, are really engaged in their community, just trying to uplift them, provide some sense of joy and passion. So I think that's the distinction in both when it comes to fandom. But when it comes to the business side, these sports entities are businesses. They have HR. They have accounting and financial arms, CFOs. They have community engagement groups. There's all kinds of groups around marketing and sales and everything else that you see that's part of a business. And you have employees, at the end of the day. And so when you're dealing with employees, et cetera, that's kind of what makes it a business. Again, the uniqueness of what we do on the sports side is that you're also dealing with coaches. and personnel as such. And so when you're managing these people and you're measuring them based off of wins and losses, sometimes that can create some of these scenarios that may provide the distinctions within the business, because how you evaluate a coach may be different than how you evaluate a staff member to a certain extent, and what goals you set for them can be determined based off of different variables that occur within the space. So for me, those are kind of the distinctions. It's the athletes and the coaches, but the similarity is that it is a business. People care about it. You have a customer base, which is your fan base. You got a product that people come to see, that they pay to see. And so you want whatever you're doing from an entertainment standpoint to perform at the value of which people are paying. We just talked about it being worth billions of dollars. And so if somebody's coming to see that, you want them to be entertained and leave that experience saying, hey, you know what? I had a great time and it was worth my investment in attending.
So as a business, when you're talking about a professional sports team, I'm here in North Texas. And so we have proof that you don't have to have a winning team to have a very valuable team. I mean, any of us who are Dallas Cowboys fans are still crying, but it's a very valuable team, and it makes a crap ton of money for Jerry Jones and his partners. So, how does, as a business, a sports organization go about goal setting, performance management, those kinds of things? And what could other businesses learn from either on the coach and athlete side or the back office, front office side, learn from how sports teams plan and measure performance?
Yes, on the performance side, you have measurable things that's out there. Another thing that's different is that in the sports space, the fans can actually call for our jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And when the media starts getting,
I've never seen somebody yelling for an HR director to get fired in the editorial pages of the newspaper. You're right. Yeah.
It doesn't happen, and I've experienced it in Cleveland, where stuff is not going right, then, the staff is in trouble. Talk radio, all those different things, the buzz starts running. If you're in college sports, the message boards start to buzz. There's a build of what you want to do. But as it relates to goal setting and creating those opportunities, we're just like anybody else. I think the differentiator there, too, for us on the sports side, but it's more similar, is that our numbers can be measured. Everything is analytical nowadays. I mean, even if a coach decides he wants to go for it on fourth down, which I'm not always a fan of. It all depends on where you are on the field. But if somebody decides to go for fourth down, those are analytics there. We measure things like the increase in customer relations management systems, the increase of your fan attendance and engagement, their revenue goals that are set on the revenue generation side, the number of people that you're engaging and encountering, your social media. Obviously, there are statistics that are associated and related to what those things tell you. We also look at viewership. What are we doing to increase viewership? Because, again, that has a monetary value to what you're going to receive if you're negotiating a television deal later on down the line, if something's coming up. We measure wins and losses, of coaches. And we look at other factors and variables. So, for instance, if somebody is not engaging the athletes, or if they've, quote unquote, lost the locker room, we've all seen it in business. There's some leaders who are not effective and they lose their employees' attention. They're not trustworthy. They've lost kind of that trust, so to speak. And therefore, you have to start evaluating if there needs to be a change. That happens on the sports side all the time, whether it be in leadership as well as on and off the field as well. So, again, there's a lot of similarities related to the business side of goal setting, but also holding people accountable to certain aspects of kind of what you're doing, and even providing, levels of improvement. The one thing that I don't like about both is the inability sometimes to work through conflict. And I know you've seen this, Mike, with your HR hat on, when there's people who come for folks for no other reason other than there was a disagreement and somebody had a difference of opinion about something. I think those are some things that we need to correct in sports and in business and in life in general when it comes to that. It's just learn how to disagree, but still walk out of a room and say, all right, we're gonna work through this. I mean, one of the better examples that I had of this in my career was in Kansas City. We could go into a room and we're discussing personnel, the talent that we're getting ready to acquire through the draft or free agency. And we could disagree about what we thought about players, but I promise you, when we left out of those meetings, we were going to lunch, we were going to laugh, we were going to cry laughing at the jokes that we were telling, but we were like a united front and engaged. And that was one of the better places that I saw that atmosphere of folks getting along, having a cohesive unit, being able to disagree because you were trying to get the best result. And everybody had that mindset that this person is not challenging me because of who I am. They're maybe challenging my idea about another individual. So again, what we did great was we were able to see issues and not individuals. And I think that's what's important when it comes to any kind of work that we're doing. What's the issue at hand, and not take it out on certain individuals. And I've seen that in the workplace, and I really don't have a lot of patience for that, because I can see when it's mounting up, and I see when people are starting to treat people differently because they may have a difference of opinion, and they're really just trying to get people to do better or to strive for excellence.
And we've all seen, work units where we're working together, but there's one person who's maybe the star. He's, this is the best salesperson, or our lead computer programmer, or whatever it is, where that superstar doesn't play well with the rest of the team. And we can tolerate it for a long time in the corporate world, longer than we should. I'm always an advocate for fixing that. And I'll sacrifice the talent if I can't save it to save the team. But how many times have we seen that on the field, where it's, and it seems, the NBA, the NFL is where I've seemed to notice it the most. We've got that superstar, and we've all heard the practice, talking about practice. We've all heard that meme, but where that superstar doesn't feel that, doesn't click with the rest of the team, doesn't have the allegiance to the rest of the team, those kinds of things. How would you approach that? Would you approach that differently if you were managing on the field versus managing in the corporate world, where you've got that superstar who's not quite gelling? Because of course on TV, everybody's seeing that team not gel, and like you say, they're in the newspaper, on Barstool Sports, or wherever, yelling about it.
Yeah, it's a unique dance, and the one thing that I've learned that's helped me over the years is really try to figure out who these people are personally. And I know there's always this separation and this fine line of being, corporate or professional, and not really getting involved into the individual lives of people. But I'm sure you know this too, but it's hard to compartmentalize and separate the two at times. There's a lot of things that you could be getting from people, particularly in my work with athletes. Somebody may be having something going on at home that you don't really understand or know about. And so part of my role, being a part of a pro sports franchise, we've had players that have lost loved ones. We've had players that were dealing with family situations that were creating a lot of crisis. And so it impacts their performance on and off the field. And it's similar to when you're managing people in the workplace, because again, people don't really want to know how much you know until they know how much you care. I've managed my staff in a similar way of just trying to be engaged, because you can tell when an employee is not engaged based off of what's going on. And there could be this need, particularly, we're talking about the superstar, just trying to bring that focus back. But even superstars have this pressure and heaviness on them to perform at a high level. There's people reaching for them or grabbing for certain aspects of their lives that we may not really understand what's going on. So I really think it's important to really try to figure out ways to not necessarily motivate them, but to kind of see what is motivating them. And again, you have to do this without manipulation. The worst kind of leadership style or management style is one that is trying to coerce somebody to do something through manipulation, because people can smell that from a mile away. Right. You need to be genuine, authentic in your approach. You need to be trying to do what's in their best interest. One of the things I used to do with my teams, and still do now with my teams, is to let them know I really want what's best for you. There's nothing better than to see you succeed and to see you thrive. And that's really what I'm all about. But again, you have to live that out. It can't just be lip service. When somebody does something great, you can't turn around and become envious and jealous of what somebody's accomplishment is. The one thing that sports has taught me is that you have to accept and appreciate the stars who are shining at the moment. Because in sports, there's a new star born every day. You might have been the leading scorer one game, but then the next game, somebody comes along and does something well, and you want to continue to go with the hot hand, right? You know, you can't. When I was coaching my son's team, I never forget this story. There was a kid, I had told another kid to come because we had a rotation. Hey, you're going to sub in for this kid to get him off the bench. Man, this kid hit like 3 threes in a row. And I said to the kid, hey, man, you go on back. Because we're going to let him get this out. You know, he's on a hot streak. I want him to stay in so he can continue to live that out and reach his potential. We'll sub you in for somebody else, but he's staying in the game because he's got the hot hand, and we need to make sure that we're going with him. I don't necessarily know if workplaces are created and designed to do that. Some of them are, where you have some healthy cultures, but other places, sometimes when you do have somebody that is a high achiever or somebody that's excellent, I don't necessarily know, and I don't know what your experience has been, Mike, but sometimes it's difficult for some leaders to deal with that versus looking at that as an advantage of them relieving me from certain pressures. They look at it as, you know, it's kind of a David Saul situation. You know, Saul has slain his 1,000, but David is 10,000. Now individuals start getting in their feelings. And when you start getting into your feelings and envy and jealousy and those different things creep in, now we have a lot of issues that start to bubble over with people. And then we end up losing people from these environments versus being able to keep them and figuring out ways to work with them and their gifts.
And it takes a brave coach who really owns his position or her position to pull that star out of the middle of a game. If they're just, you know, their completions aren't there, or they're not making their shots, or whatever it is. And I think for corporate managers or people leaders, I hate the term manager because you can't manage people. You can manage code, you can manage a lot of things, but people, you can't. You can lead them if you're lucky. But corporate, people leaders, it's hard in the middle of a project. Or I've got my department, they've got their hierarchy. This person's got senior, he's got tenure, he knows his stuff, but he's not performing right now. And we're going to work on that. But in the meantime, I need this person to step back, and we're going to put this other person forward to get this team across, get our team across the finish line. So many metaphors here. We're getting them all mixed up now with sports and business. But that's a hard call for a manager on the corporate side to make. And I can only imagine with some of the egos that you deal with in the sports world, that's hard on a coach. And what if I pull my star and the backup doesn't perform any better? Then what do you do? And there's a lot of risk there too, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, these are all similar experiences that you see on the corporate side as well as you do on the sports side. And, again, it's really all about letting people know that you have their best interests in mind. If individuals understand that, they feel that's lived out every day. And again, situations are not necessarily manipulated to create whatever outcome that said person is desiring. If a person knows, again, if they know that you care about them, they're willing to receive the feedback. And again, the feedback loop has to be constructive. That's one of the things you learn in sports. You always are criticized. I mean, or I use the word critique. Criticize seems may have a negative connotation.
But you're constantly getting feedback, right? Yeah.
You're constantly getting feedback and critique. And there's nothing wrong. Like the athletes that I've worked with or that I see that work in the corporate spaces, they have no issue receiving feedback because that was constant with us. A coach will tell you, you look at the film, he'll tell you, hey, you suck right here. Like you need to you're not read stepping this right way, or you didn't take the right drop. Or they'll ask you, what were you thinking when you did this? The really good coaches, that's kind of how they get
that's a great question for a corporate manager to ask somebody who maybe didn't do the right thing in a certain situation.
Right. And that's more constructive. You had to, what were you thinking when you did this? What did you see? Because again, they have a different vantage point and perspective. If you are, again, me being a senior vice president at Major League Soccer, I may see something at a different level because I have different information than what my staff has. So again, the feedback loop, the communication loop, those things have to be airtight and they have to be frequent. I've seen managers let things fester that have bothered them. We see this work out in life and marriages, right?
Oh, yeah.
Something's on my mind, but I'm going to let it slide and see if it gets better. But those are the little foxes that destroy the vine. So don't wait until we get to performance evaluation time and you've been holding all this information and I've continued to persist to do something. Like, talk to me, give me some feedback about what I got going on to give me an opportunity to to correct course or change course of direction so that we could get to whatever the expected end is.
So you've talked about analytics and the human side. So we've all heard, if we haven't read it, we've all heard about Billy Beane's Moneyball approach, right? And you know, it was groundbreaking back when the book came out in 2003 about how he had found undervalued players by using analytics that other people weren't thinking about and built, some winning teams. And now I think a lot of that is common in business and in sports. But do you think there's still a place? Can we just select and evaluate either athletes or corporate players by analytics, or is there still a human element that needs to be part of that as far as selecting and just, at what point do we say this person doesn't check all the boxes, but my gut, my experience tells me this is the right person? How do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I think you balance them by using both methodologies. Being a quote unquote research scientist or whatever, I guess I can call myself that, having a PhD. I've been through institutional review board research. You learn that probably one of the best approaches, you got your quantitative side that people love, and then you got your qualitative side that people love. They say some of the best studies incorporate both, and which we refer to as mixed methods. So I think you gotta combine the two methods. You gotta collaborate with the information and the data that you're receiving, because your gut is something that is given to you. That's a God-given thing, in my opinion, that you're following an internal guidance system that's kind of giving you some direction about a decision that you need to make. And most of the time, people's gut is pretty much right. Sometimes you don't go with your gut. You should make a decision about something, and you like, let me just give it some time, and then you don't do. I've been on both sides of that, and then sometimes you go with your gut, or sometimes you don't necessarily follow your gut, and you go with some other kind of decision because they may have all the analytics checked off the box, but it may not necessarily be the right cultural fit for what you're trying to do, or they don't necessarily have the integrity and character,
right? And
you go against what you've created, your gauntlet or guiding guardrails that you've put in place to help you sift through that, and they may not make it. So you just have to really be in tune with what you're doing. And when you feel that and you're unsure about it, then I think it's okay to talk to them again, get more information, and put that through the pressure cooker to see if that's the right fit. But I think there's a space for both methodologies, quantitative and both qualitative, to really get you to the place that you want to be in.
And let's take a quick break. Good Morning HR is brought to you by Imperative, bulletproof background checks with fast and friendly service. At Imperative, we have 3 core values, one of which is always act in the best interest of our client. To ensure we do that, we focus on keeping 3 promises. First, we choose our team's competencies over technology, AI, or algorithms. Our research and the information we provide our clients is always guided by our professional analysts, augmented by, but never substituted with, technology. And second, because our processes are thorough, our compliance is strict, and our staff cares, our clients can fearlessly take action based on the information we provide. And finally, when the phone rings or the email chimes, our team answers and solves our clients' issues immediately with fast and friendly service. These are our promises to our clients, and it would be an honor to extend them to you. You can learn more about how Imperative serves our clients at imperativeinfo.com. If you're an HRCI or SHRM certified professional, this episode of Good Morning HR has been pre-approved for 1/2 hour of recertification credit. To obtain the recertification information, visit goodmorninghr.com and click on Recert Credits. Then select episode 181 and enter the keyword SportsBall. That's SPORTSBALL. And if you're looking for even more recertification credit, check out the webinars page at imperativeinfo.com. And now back to my conversation with Dr. Jamil Northcutt. So your dissertation, I want to switch around to talking about college athletes. Your dissertation was called The Dilemma: career transition of African American male football players at Division I institutions. Talk about a niche. You found that niche, right? That's we know exactly what you're talking about there. A lot of athletes seem to, have their glory days, where their junior, their senior year of college. And then they have to transition into the working world, the real world. They don't go pro, and they really seem to struggle. I'm a block from the TCU stadium. So I'm right here in the heart of Fort Worth. And
Nice. The
I
Horned
mean,
Frogs.
you can't throw a dead cat without hitting a real estate agent who played football for TCU. I mean, the city is full of them, but that's a hard struggle for a lot of them. And a lot of employers aren't sure what to do with this person. I mean, is this person who played football for whatever school really going to be a good CPA for me or a good accountant? Talk about hiring college athletes, what the misconceptions are, and what employers probably ought to be doing to help those former college stars be stars in the workplace.
Yeah, so I'll start with the good side of what it is. And pretty much, in my estimation, it's all good. I mean, you look at the data, and we talked about data and statistics, 95% of Fortune 500 companies, their CEOs were former college athletes.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that. So one, you're going to get somebody that's a go-getter, that's determined, that really wants to make a difference, and wants to be in a role. That's the next phase, is being in a role, understanding that, hey, they know how to play well on a team. One of the misconceptions that athletes have about coming into the corporations is that there's an assumption that everybody is willing to work on a team. And sometimes they find out in my counseling of them that, hey, everybody's not necessarily on this team ball, train. And so you got to understand that, because you're going to have a level of expectation of trust, thinking that you can trust everybody that you work with. And that's just not necessarily true. That's what we call an irrational belief system. And so you need to be able to shift that, understand there will be some people that you earn and gain trust with, or who earn and gain your trust. And as you figure that out, then that's where you start to work in concert with folks. And so there's a lot of athletes who have the determination, they have the wherewithal to really be able to get into an organization and make a difference and making an impact. I do think what some athletes need is somebody who is really giving them some clear direction about how to get started. And again, athletes are not all the same. It's not a monolith. I'm a different kind of person than some of my teammates were. I was a more vocal, more intense person than say Eli was. Eli is a funny guy. For those, me talking about Eli Manning and I were the same signing class at Ole Miss. We were teammates, but we had two totally different personalities, when it came to it. But that doesn't mean that we don't both have value, or we don't fit somewhere to be able to lead and guide. He's just a different kind of leader than I was. But we worked in concert together. Our team won a lot of games. We were great, as well as other leaders that were on our team. And so, again, I don't think we should group everybody all into the same box, because it's different. I know when I first came out and I started working a job, one of the concerns by somebody that interviewed me was, are you willing to do some of the, heavy lifting and some of the tedious tasks that we're going to ask you to do, because you were this, standout athlete at said university? Are you going to be? And it's like, hey man, you don't know me like that. And I'm like, the answer is yes. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. And so, when I worked at the Southeastern Conference, that's specifically the employer I'm talking about. We had to answer as interns, we had to answer the phone at lunch. Mm-hmm. I would do all the airport runs to pick up the other commissioners, the presidents of Gatorade and the Rose Bowl. I thrived in it. I loved doing that. And one of the things I learned by doing the tedious work that nobody was willing to do, was that it gave me an audience with people too. I wasn't trying to do that on purpose, but again, it created an opportunity for me to spend valuable time with other leaders and people who were in places that I aspired to be. I would pick up the coaches and other people. I'm not the only one that did it, but I took pride in doing that and doing it the right way. So when you get athletes, you're going to get people who are willing to do whatever it takes. But at the end of the day, too, there's also, athletes expect rewards too for their diligence and their efforts and things that we're doing. So being able to understand that and explain to people what's the trajectory, what's the tracks. Because again, we start talking about goal settings. So, okay, if we're doing X, I understand what it means to go through a process, but what's going to be the end of me doing all the things that I need to do at the end of the day? And so that's something as an athlete that you sometimes expect that there's a reward at the end of the hard work. And so being able to work through those challenges with athletes sometimes can be a task just to get them to communicate. Sometimes it depends on how well the business is doing. But a lot of athletes perform at a very, very high level, particularly, given what their goals are. They'll do whatever it takes to achieve it.
And we're almost out of time, but I found your dissertation really interesting. So to wrap up, and I know it's your whole PhD dissertation, so give it, the elevator pitch and, but I talk about, African-American players who are coming out of college at, D1 ball and into the corporate world. Are there unique challenges you think they face over their white peers in the business world that come with, who they were in college and things like that? And, and how they transition in and what employers can do specifically to make that group of players former players more successful as they come on to the corporate teams?
Yeah, so when you look at the data and the study was created, I focused specifically on African-American players, but what I've been finding over the years, and this happened in 2013 when I completed this, what we've been finding over the years is that it's similar to most athletes. So if you read the dissertation, in the literature review, you'll start to see just different subsections that kind of outline what the experience is. Again, it was a phenomenological study in Nature. We were looking at trying to explore and understand the perceptions of a particular demographic to kind of get an understanding of this transition from athletics to post-playing careers. What we found within the study, there were 6 themes that emerged. We asked questions and just different key areas around sensitizing concepts. Well, we found that, one, sports was important. So football, particularly for this particular study. We also found that there was an academic smokescreen. So where we were saying, hey, academics is important. A lot of the participants felt, all of the participants felt that people said that academics was important, but it was really important about me being eligible to play. Thirdly, there was issues around race. And so thus the African-American experience particularly has been somewhat challenging. And so you also saw it within sport about the positions that they played. You see it in corporate America around who's the CEO, who's getting a chance to thrive. The data is there for us to see. There's not a lot of African Americans in positions to be in these seats. You even see it in corporate America now on the sports side. When I start looking at people who are on TV, calling games, the analysts of the shows, I can name several Black quarterbacks who've won MVP, who won Heisman trophies, and they're nowhere to be found on the major broadcast or telecast in the booth to be that person giving their take or analyzing the game. They're bumped down to certain levels, but they don't get a chance to sit at the higher places. So you see that parallel play out in corporate America as you do on the field and with positions or whatever. Now you're seeing the rise of the Black quarterback, so to speak. They've always been able to do that, but it's always been, he can't think, he's an athlete, he's not cerebral. So these are some of the things that the participants said in the study. And then you find the economic hardship piece. So positions are tied to which level that you're at. If I'm a senior vice president, I get paid as a senior vice president. But if the majority of the employees are coordinators, managers, and we don't push them past director into VP level, upper level management spots, C-suite spots, then that's going to be a challenge on their economics. So everything that we saw in the study parallels kind of the experience. And then we start talking about student athlete rights. We're seeing this play out big time.
NIL, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's right. With all the court cases. Again, I said this stuff almost 11 years ago, that these things were coming down the pipe, that this was going to happen. And so we're seeing that develop. And then again, you start dealing with the difficult transitions and identity issues, which everybody deals with this. If you're part of an organization, you've been there for a while, when you decide to either do something different or you lose a job or you let go, that identity is part of that. Similar with athletes. Athletes are human beings just like everybody else. And again, the theoretical framework that set up the study was transition theory. The idea in transition theory, or the definition, is any event or non-event that results in these changes in relationships, assumptions, roles, routines. Essentially, what we're saying is that things are going to change. We've seen corporations, when new leadership comes in, you start seeing a group of people, generally they recycle or they cycle out somewhere or they move. When new coaches are hired, you see them bringing in new staffs. So this is part of what we deal with in corporations, just like we do on the sports side. Change is part of it. This could be, we see employees having babies and children. We see employees getting married and the changes that happens. We also see employees dealing with deaths of family members and loved ones. These things impact work.
Sure.
Again, these are the things that you can't compartmentalize that have an impact or effect on what is happening in somebody's life and their experience. That's why we have to be, closely kind of connected to what's happening in people's lives so that we can provide constructive feedback, or anytime we can provide support. So what transition theory does, it talks about liabilities and assets. Who is the person? Who are you in the situation? Which is yourself. What is the situation that's occurring? It also talks about support that you need, and then what's the strategy? And so I thought that theory was great for the study that we did. But again, this is applicable to all parts of life, whether you're on the corporate side or whether you're in the sports business side. I've come to learn that this theoretical framework is universal to the human experience at the end of the day.
And it's probably not coincidental that's the name of your organization, is Strategic Transitions Associates.
Advisors.
Advisors, yeah. So how do you apply that transition theory then on the corporate side? Let's wrap up with that, because now you got me hooked. I really wish we'd just spent the last half hour talking about that topic. Talk a little bit more about that on the corporate side.
Yeah. So again, relationships, assumptions, roles, and routines. Those 4 areas: relationships, assumptions, roles, and routines. What's the relationship? What assumptions do people have? So if you're looking at corporations and people who are coming in, I always try to get to the crux of, okay, what kind of relationship do you want to have? What kind of relationship do I want to have with you? What are the assumptions that you have about what we're trying to do and what that looks like? So let's try to get to the bottom of that. What is your role? Like, what role? We got to be clear and communicative about what people's roles are. And then also, but when those roles change, we have to, whether we do desk audits or whether we figure out ways to talk about that, those things are highly important. And then the routine, because when you shift roles, sometimes the routine is different. We have to talk about those major critical areas, particularly on the corporate side. And a lot of times we don't. Somebody will get a new manager or a new leader come in, and things will be shifting and changing, and then we're not communicating expectations, because we know with again, it's like a marriage, and I always relate back to my own personal marriage. I have to continue to talk to my wife about what her needs are and what the expectations are of me. Vice versa, I have to communicate those to her of things that I need. We literally, at lunch today, this is the conversation that we were having, because I love my wife. I want us to get along with each other, and I want what's best for our marriage and our family. We have to do that with our employees and people within the organization as well, because as they get older, age, stage, there are things that are shifting. Their priorities are shifting about what they want to do, how they want to do it. Are they dug in one way because they know that this is going to work? Or are they open to change and a new strategy or not? Because when you start mixing a bunch of people together, again, we all talked about other theories, group development theory, right? We all go through forming, storming. Again, storming is the second stage. The team comes together, then you storm, then you normalize, then you perform. And then, that somebody added a fifth, then you adjourn if there's nothing else that you can achieve anymore. But again, like those are the 4 stages of group development when you start putting new groups together. So I think for corporate America and for people that are in HR positions or for people who are in leadership positions leading people, you got to keep these things at the top of your mind. You have to be a communicative leader. You have to figure out what's going on with people, what's their assumptions, what's happening. Because again, what they have going on at home is going to impact their relationship with you, whether you believe it or not. It's not saying that you're being nosy, but what can you do as an employer to ease that burden at home so that you get somebody's best self when they show up at work?
Right. What do I have to do to help you be successful while you're here, right?
That's it. And it may be helping you manage your finances.
Mm-hmm.
It may be we've got financial literacy courses or application things for people to come in that allow you to be released so you're not necessarily worrying about getting a raise and promotion and worrying about your paycheck. It may be, hey, you got a wellness benefit that you're, so it's not just always giving everything to people, but again, you got to get people to see what do they need to do to help the employer. But also, what does the employer need to do to help the employee? And I think once you kind of figure that dance out with your team and your staff, then I think you can have some success.
That's so good. Hey, you've given me more time than I asked for. I sure appreciate it. Thanks for joining me, Jamil.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity, Mike. And it's good to be with you guys today. And hopefully somebody's learned something from our conversation at hand. So.
Well, I've got a big, long list of other things I want to talk about. So we're going to get you back on.
Hey, let's do it. I'd love to.
Appreciate it. And thank you for listening. You can comment on this episode or search our previous episodes at goodmorninghr.com or on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. And don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcast. Rob Upchurch is our technical producer, and you can reach him at robmakespods.com. And thank you to Imperative's marketing coordinator, Marianne Hernandez, who keeps the trains running on time. And I'm Mike Coffey, as always. Don't hesitate to reach out if I can be of service to you personally or professionally. I'll see you next week, and until then, be well, do good, and keep your chin up.